My son was diagnosed with severe OCD and BBD, which is body dysmorphia. When it started when he was 13, he was bullied at school. Very talented young man, very bright, lots of hobbies, interests, was doing very well at school. And unfortunately, the bullying caused him to have depression and anxiety, and for the OCD to basically take over his life to the extent that he couldn't go out, he couldn't intermix with people, he couldn't read anymore, he couldn't write, he couldn't wear clothes. The list is endless. We got him. We first of all applied to CAMHS, which weren't very effective. With Jack at that time, he was 13, 14 years of age, and the help they offered wasn't appropriate for a child of his needs, and things escalated. He then ended up being treated at the Maudsley in South London at the Special OCD Disorders Clinic. From there, we fought and we got him into the Priory in South London. He was 15 when he went into the Priory, and he was there for just under a year, which again, the system let him down. They didn't have the staff or the means to deal with him appropriately, and he was more or less kicked out of there after 10 months and left. Within this time, he deteriorated, felt very hopeless. There was also, to be fair, a lot going on within the family. Myself and his father were in the middle of a divorce, which obviously didn't help. And it resulted in Jack being taken into a very specialist centre, one of the only specialist centres in the world in London, called Bethlem, which was highly, highly recommended. They did a documentary on television about it, the Bedlam. It used to be called, it's now called Bethlem. But unfortunately, he progressed quite well initially, and then the authorities deemed that they couldn't afford to keep him there anymore. And on hearing this information, he panicked and he ran away. And we had no idea where he was whatsoever. He had no contact with anybody. And then months and months and months later, my elder son managed to contact his social worker, who thought that Ben knew what had happened to Jack because somebody had signed in to visit him in hospital under my elder son's name. So she, without realising, gave him the information that Jack had been in St Thomas's Hospital for a week in London after taking a massive overdose of paracetamol in a park. Obviously, it was heart-rending. There's no words to describe how it made myself and the rest of our family feel. We didn't even know. Thank God somebody found him. It was a paramedic who, well, it wasn't, it was a member of the public found him and called 999, and thank God, you know, they got there in time. But from what I know, Jack has since discussed this with me in quite a lot of detail, and he was a very lucky young man because he had taken an awful lot of drugs and he was in hospital for over a week. So they really did find it quite hard to get it out of his system. But this isn't uncommon in people with these particular anxiety disorders. I think people have to sit up and realise that although we all have certain elements of anxiety, certain OCDs even, when it becomes the main control in your life, it makes life not worth living. And that's what happened with my son. But thank God now he's gone through the mill even since then. Was sectioned back in August this year, due to the fact that he just wasn't looking after himself and wasn't able to, he'd stopped eating and taking meds, etc. But this actually made him open up finally and allowed me to be part of his life again, whereas he'd cut us all out beforehand. And I've managed to get him into a rehab facility in Harrow. And I'm glad to say that he's progressing, be it very slowly. He's 21 now, but he talks quite openly about his suicide attempts and about how desperate he was and about how he couldn't see a tomorrow, and all he felt he was doing was being a liability to people, making people upset and hurting people, not thinking about how much he's loved and how many good qualities he has, and how this is an illness. This is something that he can't help. And I think that what he did in the park that day was a cry for help, but also I think that he had come to that stage where every door seemed closed to him and there didn't seem anywhere else to go. Jack was a performer. He was artistic, so he performed on stage to quite a high level. He was on the television quite a few times, and he was very talented. And that is, I think, what escalated his problems, because on the stage he was so phenomenal, but he really did become that person to such a degree, and he had such charisma. You couldn't take, and that's not his mum talking. I used to sit and hear people I didn't know around me in the audience saying, "God, that boy," you know. But I think in the end, he was acting in his everyday life. He'd just be whoever everybody else wanted him to be, and I think he forgot himself along the way. And I think that is what, you know, is so hard. But yeah, you wouldn't wish it on. I mean, I've had to have quite a bit of time off at work, especially when because that was the day before my 50th birthday. He did that. He was sectioned. It was just horrific. Although there are plenty of organisations and websites, etc., and I have dabbled in some of them, and I have been offered counselling by my GP and stuff like that. It's very difficult to speak to people who haven't been in your shoes, whether they're professional or whether they're family. Even my own mother, who couldn't be closer to my children than she is, and who's obviously been through an awful lot of pain through Jack being ill, but even she says, I'm still not his mum, and I cannot imagine what it would be like. And I think that is the difficulty, that until you've actually been there, it's very hard. I would have liked to have spoken to more people in my shoes, and that didn't seem to be as widely offered. I did try and do a support group, which I was quite keen on doing, with people suffering from depression for similar reasons. But then when it came to it, they didn't have the places available. And I am still on a waiting list. But by the time it comes up, I probably won't need or want it. But I do think there is a lack of understanding exactly how it affects parents and siblings. I think, you know, both my other children have got issues, a form of depression, which has been brought on by Jack's illness and also by myself and my ex-husband's breakup. And my oldest son is dealing with it, but he's on antidepressants, which is something that I never ever thought would happen. And my daughter is going the same way. So I think the family support, as well as support for myself, I don't think it was as readily available as it should have been. And I think I did go to counselling, but I spoke to somebody who'd never experienced what I was experiencing. So I felt like, as much as they tried to help, they couldn't, because I just went round full circle and came back to the beginning of, but if it was a cut on the knee, I could put a plaster on it.
okay?
It was obviously shock initially, massive shock, and then you visualise in your head, and which after, because at first I didn't know how it had happened, in what way it had happened, what he'd done, where he was. So you go through all of that, and I had no way of finding out either, because my son was only told a certain amount, and my ex-husband kept information anyway, deliberately. So I went through that. I went through absolute disbelief, shock. Why? You do blame yourself. What could I have done differently? What should I have done differently? In my case, if I'd have left my husband when I should have done many, many years ago, it probably wouldn't have happened. He probably wouldn't be where he is. But at the time, I stayed because I thought I was doing the right thing for the kids, and it's quite ironic, really, how it turned out, because I should have left my husband when they were little. So I did blame myself, yeah, big time, to the extent that, yeah, and I did feel really, really angry. Why? Why Jack? You know, other people split up. Their children don't. Other people get bullied. Their children don't go down that route. So yeah, all of those things. And I felt, you know, I was severely, severely depressed for some time. But then had to find a way of actually dealing with it, because you can only go one way or the other. And I was going to be no help to Jack or my other kids if I wasn't here, or if I was in bed. So I had to find a way to deal with it.